There's a psychological study from the 1990s where researchers asked participants to rate themselves across a range of abilities: driving, social skills, intelligence, leadership. 93% rated themselves above average. The number is mathematically impossible and psychologically inevitable, because nobody identifies with average. The word has been loaded with so much cultural weight: mediocre, forgettable, replaceable, that claiming it feels like admitting defeat. But the study reveals something deeper than cognitive bias. It reveals that average isn't a place anyone actually occupies in their own experience. It's a category that exists only when you're looking at other people. You've never felt average from the inside. You've only feared it from the outside. And a category that no one experiences from within and everyone projects from without isn't describing reality. It's describing a fear the culture invented and installed in you before you were old enough to question whether it pointed at anything real. The concept of average was never designed for human beings. A statistician named Adolphe Quetelet invented it in the early 1800s to describe the midpoint of a data set. The average of 1,000 measurements of height gives you a number. That number is useful for building door frames. It is useless for describing the person walking through them. In the 1940s, the United States Air Force built cockpits to fit the average pilot. Average arm length, average torso height, average leg reach. A researcher named Gilbert Daniels checked how many of the 4,000 pilots actually matched the average across all the key dimensions. The answer was 0. The cockpit had been designed for a body that didn't exist. A mathematical ghost assembled from thousands of different people that represented none of them. They redesigned the cockpit with adjustable seats, and the crash rate dropped. That story should have ended the concept's application to human beings. It didn't. Because by then, the ghost had escaped the lab. The education system built itself around it, grading on curves, sorting children into above and below. The economy absorbed it. Performance reviews that rank employees against a composite no one matches. The culture weaponized it, turning a statistical tool into an identity category that makes ordinariness feel like a death sentence. You are born into a world already measuring you against a fiction. And the fear you carry of being average is a fear of failing to outrun something that was never behind you. Jung would have recognized this fear immediately, because he spent his career watching it drive people into exhaustion, performance, and psychological ruin. He saw the ego's deepest terror as the possibility of insignificance. The idea that you might not be special, that your existence might not stand apart from the mass of human lives, is so threatening to the ego that it will organize your entire psychology around avoiding it. The career you chose, the image you maintain, the constant low-level comparison running in the background of every social interaction. Where do I stand? Am I ahead? Am I falling behind? All of it is the ego sprinting from a feeling it cannot tolerate. And the feeling is based on a premise that collapses the moment you examine it. That there is a real place called average, that human beings can occupy it, and that occupying it means your life didn't register. Remove the premise and the fear has nothing to stand on. But nobody removes it, because the fear is profitable. A person afraid of being average will work until they break, will buy things they don't need to signal distinction, will perform their life for an audience that's too busy performing their own to watch. The fear is the engine of an entire economy, and the economy has no interest in telling you the engine is burning fuel for a destination that doesn't exist. Here's what average actually erases when you apply it to a person. You might be unremarkable in one domain and extraordinary in another. Average at small talk and exceptional at deep conversation. Average under normal conditions and completely transformed under pressure. The composite can't hold that complexity. It takes your entire multidimensional landscape, every peak, every valley, every unusual combination of abilities that makes you specifically you, and compresses it into a single dot. And the dot looks nothing like the territory it claims to represent. Todd Rose, a Harvard researcher who left high school with a 0.9 GPA, spent years proving this. He demonstrated that a student whose average in aggregate is almost never average across individual dimensions. The average collapses the jagged profile that every human being actually has into a smooth line that none of them have. His conclusion was simple and devastating. When you design for the average, you design for nobody. When you measure a person against the average, you're measuring them against nobody. And when you fear being average, you're fearing becoming nobody in a category that contains nobody. The fear has zero members in its threat. It always has. So if average doesn't exist as a real category that real people occupy, what has the fear actually been doing to you all these years? It's been choosing for you, quietly, below the level of conscious decision-making, every time you selected the impressive option over the meaningful one. Every time you chased a goal because it looked exceptional from the outside, rather than because it felt right from the inside. Every time you measured a day's worth by what you produced, rather than what you experienced. That was the fear steering. Using your hands, speaking with your voice, building a life shaped by the avoidance of something that was never there. Jung described the ego's need for specialness as a defense mechanism, a way of avoiding the deeper confrontation with the self. Because if you're constantly performing exceptionalism, you never have to sit still long enough to ask the question the ego is actually afraid of. The question isn't, am I average? The question underneath that one, the one the fear is really running from, is, who am I without the performance? That question has an answer, and the answer isn't average. It's specific, irreducibly, unrepeatably specific. The combination of your exact experiences, your exact neurology, your exact way of processing the world has never existed before and will never exist again. That's not inspiration, that's arithmetic. The probability of another you is zero. It always was. The fear of being average asks you to believe you could be replaced by a statistical midpoint. Your existence makes that mathematically impossible. The fear doesn't dissolve by achieving more. Every person who's tried that approach knows the cycle. The accomplishment lands, the relief lasts a few weeks, and the fear recalibrates with a higher bar. You didn't escape average. You rented a temporary distance from it that expired the moment the achievement became normal. The fear dissolves when you see what it's actually afraid of, and what it's actually afraid of is a category that has had zero members since the species began. A ghost dressed in a lab coat, carrying a clipboard full of numbers that describe nobody, standing at the center of your psychology, demanding you run. You can stop running. The thing behind you was never there. What remains when the running stops isn't average. It isn't exceptional. It's something the fear never gave you permission to experience. The full, unranked, unmeasured weight of being exactly who you are. Without a scoreboard, without a comparison, without the desperate need to be anything other than the specific, unrepeatable thing you already were before the fear told you it wasn't enough. It was always enough. The measurement was always broken. And the person you've been performing for, the one who finally confirms you're above the line, doesn't exist either. You've been auditioning for a ghost. The audition is over,